All 3 victims attended our public high school, and all 3 victims, to the best of our knowledge, appeared to be virgins.
Hello, welcome back to Ycft. Today we're talking about a movie that probably not a lot of people have heard of. We've seen a few channels talking about it, but it's a relatively unknown film from the year 2000 called Cherry Falls.
Yeah.
For a while, held the record for being one of the highest budgeted TV movies.
14 million.
But it was never supposed to go to TV.
It wasn't meant to be a TV movie, no.
No, it was not.
This movie got royally screwed.
By the ratings board. And probably because it was not long after Columbine.
We'll get into the very unfortunate timing of this movie, but 1999, 2000, it wasn't the kindest era for horror movies because of world events.
Yes. But we are also still in the wake of Scream, and I definitely think there's some influence Scream had on the plot of this film. So the film is basically about a killer, a female killer, who is hunting down students at this school.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty cut and dry, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, yep, I like the plot. Kills them in gruesome ways. There is definitely a secret that the town is keeping, or these certain people in the town is keeping, and it's up to our lead character to try and work out the truth. It's actually way more complicated than I just made it sound.
That's the basic plot, I guess.
I suppose we will probably have to spoil like the twists of this movie.
Look, we're 100%. We need to talk about who the killer is, the motive, everything.
Why the killer's picking particular students.
Yes.
Flipping convention, the killer is killing virgins.
Yeah,
now, traditionally in horror, if you have sex, you die.
Yeah.
The final girl is usually virginal.
Usually that's how it goes.
I mean, the final girl in this is still virginal. But
that's also true.
That is also true. But the killer is particularly targeting virgins and is carving virgin in their leg.
Yes.
Which leads the town in a bit of a moral quandary. Of sorts,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's like, do we tell our children that they should probably have sex?
Exactly, yeah.
In order to save themselves.
Yeah.
But as a parent, we physically cannot do this.
Yeah.
Well, what are we supposed to tell our kids?
To go out and get laid if they want to feel safe?
No, I'm not saying that.
It's an interesting concept. Anyone who is familiar with the slasher genre, especially, I think this more or less like pertains solely to the slasher subgenre. Yeah, you have sex, you die. That is just how it goes. That's how it's always been. It is our final girl, in order to survive, needs to be pure, and she needs to, have all of her wits about her, and she can't be a survivor if she's too busy going off and having sex and being flirty and being distracted by all the boys. So, which I actually think is what John Carpenter, interestingly, when he was talking about Halloween, he even said he wasn't trying to make a comment with Jamie Lee Curtis, like she had to be virginal in order to survive. It was purely like the distraction element. Anyway, sorry, little weird tangent.
I would probably say slashers today are much more sex positive.
Yes.
This film kind of helped beckon in a new era of sex positivity within horror movies, or particularly that's after Scream, no movie wanted to be caught following conventions.
Yes.
Because Scream just pointed out how ridiculous the conventions are.
Yeah.
So this would be one of big movies that's like, right, well, we're going to flip it.
Absolutely.
Whilst also technically following it. But now today it's like anyone is open game in a slasher. I do kind of miss slashers having rules.
Yes.
In a way, I always thought like that was kind of fun. But this is the start of the radical changes to what you can expect from a slasher movie. But also slashers are not as common as they used to be.
That's also
very true. They weren't very common during the 2000s because we had a couple of run of bad ones that did kill the subgenre for a while.
Yeah.
But this one, it's a very interesting choice.
It is. It's a very simple twist on a classic, very well established convention, and I really like that. As you say, the whole town finds themselves in this very tricky predicament where in order to save their kids, they have to they tell them actually having sex is going to be what saves you. So it's
they don't tell them.
No, they don't actually. The kids take it upon themselves to save themselves. which is also pretty cool.
By organising a massive orgy. With there being this massive orgy, all the social boundaries that within traditional high school films are kind of broken down.
Yeah.
Like, there's popular kids there, there's cool kids, uncool kids, nerds, everyone, like, because it's survival. But there is also still people making deals while they're there to pair off how they want to pair off. But I also kind of like that. I also like the kids taking it upon themselves to, like...
Totally.
At this point, they don't care that there's a killer.
No.
They're like...
They just want to...
We can get laid.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
I like how we see like, the guy's side of it, and then the women's side. They're not going to know what to do. Think you're going to orgasm? Forget it. Not going to happen. You're going to have to guide them every step of the way. We're doing this. The women are there for survival. The guys are there for sex.
Have to do everything. Boys are totally clueless when it comes to sex. It starts with them trying to unhook our bras, fumbling around, and it never changes.
It's essentially, yeah.
So that elements of that within this film that I just really, really enjoyed, and that's what surprised me about this one.
I think so. So just for a bit of wider context, I only became aware of this movie very recently. I'd never heard of it at all. We were out shopping one day. We were in one of our favourite video DVD stores, and I saw the Blu-ray of this. And the reason it got my attention was because Brittany Murphy was all over the front cover. And I was like, Brittany Murphy was in a horror movie from the early 2000s. And I flipped it and I looked at the blurb on the back. And I told you, I was like, the basic premise is killer is targeting virgins. All the kids in the high school taking upon themselves to throw a sex party. And I was like, what a fun premise for a movie. We didn't get the DVD. But I was still very curious about it, so we eventually tracked it down. We watched it.
Yeah, we've never been able to find the Blu-ray of it since.
No, but we did watch it. And I then ended up watching a lot of other YouTubers talking about it, like big channels like Joe Blow and a couple of the others. Everyone is very unanimous in their praise for Cherry Falls. And a lot of people saying that it potentially even rivals Scream for just its...
Subversion.
It's subversion of the genre. Yeah, it's cleverness. It's that, again, that balance of horror and comedy. It's self-awareness. It's meta-ness. And I don't know, I mean, I still rate Scream, very high. Like, Scream is kind of untouchable for me at this point. But I did really enjoy Cherry Falls. There's a lot about this movie I like, and I think there's a lot about it to dissect, because it's not just all about sex. There's some other interesting stuff that's going on as well. It actually gets pretty dark, this movie.
It does. And I also have a few issues.
This is not a perfect film by any chance. But like we were saying at the beginning, it was done dirty because of various different reasons. It should have had a cinematic release. It did get a cinematic release here in the UK.
That's what's really strange. So, not long after Columbine, as students, being killed in school.
Yes.
And a big orgy scene, so we've got two things that the MPAA...
We're not fans of.
They were never fan. I think they was always going to struggle with the orgy scene anyway.
Yeah.
But the violence against students within a school during that time is what really put the nail in the coffin. But then the BBFC, who have famously always had a stick up their butt since they were formed...
Yeah.
We let it in.
Gave this movie a free pass. And apparently it did pretty well over here in the UK.
Yeah.
As well. So... I think it deserves to be talked about. I think it deserves to be seen for anyone who hasn't seen it. So I'm excited that we're talking about it today.
You want to introduce us to our main character?
Yeah. So Brittany Murphy, she plays Jodie Markin, who is a student at this high school. Her dad is played by Michael Biehn, who is the town's sheriff. So, he's like a pretty big player in the town. And Jodie, she is in a relationship with her boyfriend of one whole year, Kenny. Kenny and Jodie have not gone all the way, and it's reached a point at the beginning of the film, it's a point of contention where he's getting a little bit frustrated, and so he says very glibly they should start seeing other people.
He's a bit of a dick.
Kenny, I have so many mixed feelings on Kenny, and we will get into Kenny, because I still don't really know how I feel about Kenny. But anyway, Jodie is our final girl, essentially. Brittany Murphy. Love Brittany. And we a couple of other friends as well, friendship groups, across the movie. But primarily the film kind of focuses on Jodie and her family, and particularly the relationship between her and her dad. And Jodie at one point becomes a target of the killer. And we come to learn that, as you were saying, there is something of a bit of a conspiracy going on. There are a couple of people, key people, in the town that are aware of an event that happened many, many years ago that might shed some light on the current slayings in the town today. So that is essentially the plot without any spoilers. Yeah. As I say, we are going to spoil the shit out of this movie because we kind of have to.
I personally think Brittany Murphy was a bit miscast in this film. There are moments towards the end where she is great, but it might just be the way her character's written. I don't know, there's just... I don't get it from her. Like, it's a really weird way to say it, but she's a bit boring for me for the first half of this movie, and I think it's pure... I don't think it's anything on her as an actress. I think it's just how she was written, and it kind of leads into a weird thing that we clocked on second viewing is how certain scenes between certain characters are weirdly sexual.
There's a lot
where they shouldn't be.
Yes, exactly. There is a lot of sexually charged moments between characters where there absolutely should not be any sexual tension between characters.
Yeah, and it's like, is that just weird direction?
I think it's a little bit of
sort of some subtext.
Yeah,
it's like, as soon as Kenny breaks up with her mum comes over, asks him for a cigarette, is flirting with him, he's flirting back. This is like within 5 seconds.
It's very inappropriate.
And it's really weird. Her dad is teaching her self-defense, and it comes across as really sexually charging. He's not stepdad. He is...
Oh, he's a biological dad.
Biological dad. It's like, why are certain scenes filmed so... One with the headmaster, and there's definitely like a secretary who gives him like the eyes. He gives eyes. Like, right, there's definitely something going on. There's so many sexually charged scenes in this movie.
Yeah, that is so obvious.
Some are like, all right, we got a little bit of something going on here. Others, it's like, what? It's a dad.
Yes. Yeah.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
We'd like to shout out our groovy members. We appreciate everything you do for this channel and helping us grow. You guys are awesome.
It's weird. And
yes.
Maybe that, for me, is the problem I have with Brittany Murphy's character, is the way she's written amongst all of this weirdness that...
I understand what you're saying. I mean...
Good, because I don't really understand what I'm saying.
I'm
glad you could make some sense of that.
I get it, because Brittany Murphy, I've always liked her. I was genuinely really upset when she died back in 2009. And I was really happy when I saw, like, oh, as I say, like, she was what attracted me to this film. Because I do enjoy her as an actress. I do think some of it is her acting. I don't think it's particularly strong in the movie. She does fear very well. She's got a good scream. When she's under attack, I think she really kind of comes particularly alive. But there is also something to the character that is, I think, again, on second viewing, I clocked it. She's very infantilized in a way. There's something very childlike about the character. And I think a lot of that is in the casting of Brittany. Brittany Murphy was, like 5'2", very small and very petite. And there's just something inherently very fragile, I think, about Brittany. She kind of looks like if you touch her, she'll shatter into a million pieces. But she's called baby a lot by her both parents. Yeah. Like her mum kisses her on the lips. And she's, like a 16, 17-year-old girl. She calls her father daddy, which I think in and of itself, like can be construed in a particular way, maybe. But there is something inherently quite childlike about the character. But I, for the most part, I do like her. I like her as a final girl. I also kind of like how she's a little bit of a goth girl.
Yeah.
Which is unusual. You don't really get a lot of final girls like that in horror.
Yeah, especially not, in the year 2000 or late 90s.
Absolutely, yeah.
I do have to say, through several points in the movie, like, her and Kenny's hair is atrocious.
It's really bad. Yeah,
this era, I remember because I lived through it, was not the best fashion-wise.
It's absolutely
If it ever
not.
starts to come back, it would be a lot of fun because it's bad.
Yeah.
Kenny looks like a pineapple.
Yeah.
And her hair,
it's not good.
On purposely styled to look greasy.
Yeah.
Like, stringy.
Yeah.
When you picture the early 2000s, that is them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. It's not physically, it's not necessarily aged well, but I do really like it nonetheless. And some of the other people in Jodie's circle, so she has quite a close relationship with her English teacher, Mr. Marliston, who is played by a guy called Jay Moore, and he's very different to Kenny in that he's clearly a little bit more emotionally mature. I think just the fact that he's the English teacher, so there's something maybe inherently like kind of romantic that she's, you know, like attracted to his ideals and whatnot. But again, her dad is the sheriff of this town, so he's visiting all the crime scenes, and he learns before anybody else does that the victims so far are virgins. So it leads to this interesting conversation that he has with his daughter in one particular scene where he goes into a room and he wakes her up in the middle of the night, and he basically asks her, "Are you still a virgin?" Not in those words specifically.
It's like, how far have you got?
He words it in a way like, "Can you go further than what you've gone?"
Have you gone further than that? Listen, I wouldn't ask you this unless it was absolutely necessary. Can you go further than you have?
Or, you know, something along those lines. And, she says yes. She can go further. But he doesn't need to worry because she and Kenny are broken up and blah-de-blah. And I actually really like that scene between father and daughter.
Awkward as hell, but it would be a very awkward scene.
Kind of the crux of the movie, right? It's you putting the parents in this morally questionable like dilemma of what do we do in this situation.
Yeah.
But as with some scenes between father and daughter I do actually like their dynamic. He's clearly very protective of his daughter. Of both parents, she's clearly more attached, I think, to her dad. She's got more of a relationship with her dad than she does her mum.
Yeah.
But in terms, I think we kind of need to talk about the conspiracy.
Yeah. I just want to say, so in regards to like the sheriff having to have this meeting with all the parents, but this is what's going on. I really like how it instantly turns to a lot of them fighting. Yeah. Because it's like someone like, well, you don't have to worry about it.
What does that mean?
Start accusing the kids of kids of the bad behavior.
Yeah.
I can't lock my daughter up in the basement.
I wouldn't worry about it, Victor.
What are you saying about my daughter?
Sit down, Victor. I was joking.
It's a hell of a time to be joking about a thing like this.
Hey, back off!
It just descends into chaos. Absolute chaos.
Yeah.
But I suppose we should briefly talk about the killer before.
Yes, we do.
Cause that leads heavily into the conspiracy. Kills are really good, quite violent. There's a great chase through the school right after the town meeting that I also really like. I think that was very, very well done.
Town meeting is a really good scene. I don't think it lasts long enough. I think I would have liked to have seen it play out a little bit more.
What is the name of the killer?
Laura Lee Sherman.
This is going to get quite dark.
Yeah, forewarning.
This is a warning on that one. I got to praise the film for doing this type of
story.
The conspiracy involves the sheriff, the headmaster, the principal. Oh yeah, they don't have headmasters, do they? Well, it's principals.
Principal.
And two other people that you will never see in this movie.
Yeah.
Which I have a problem with.
They're just referenced.
They went to school with a girl called Laura Lee.
Yeah.
And
27 years ago.
27 years prior, after a night, was it prom, maybe?
It was like pre-prom or the night before or something. Yeah.
Driving along, drunk. The sheriff, obviously before he was the sheriff, basically can't remember the night. He was paraplegically drunk. He was absolutely trucked. Weird thing that in the UK, you can basically make anything sound like someone's drunk.
Yeah, that's true.
He is absolutely hockey sticked. He's biscuited. It just works. Everything works. So I'm going with trucked.
Okay.
Completely out of it. And they come across her on the side of the road. And their first idea is to rape her. She was the outcast.
She's a bit of an outsider in the school. She's a bit of a loner. She doesn't really have any friends. And three boys taking the sheriff out of it because, again, he is just completely out of it. He's borderline passed out at this stage. The three boys
pour booze down her mouth.
Yeah.
And
each take a turn.
Force the sheriff. I think they basically do all the work for him. He does have a line when it's revealed. He's like, "Oh, I knew what I was doing."
I knew what I was doing.
But Daddy knew.
Part of me feels like there's been some changes there to try and make the sheriff more likable. The killer is dressed like her.
Yes.
Which leads to a lot, they think, oh, has she come back? Has she taken revenge on the town? Because it was never reported.
No.
Like I said, two of the guys have moved away. The other two have obviously got into very high-ranking positions.
Swept under the rug.
horrific. And obviously, stuff like this,
Of course
happens
it does. Of
happens
course it does.
all the time. And a lot of the conversations that this movie has about it isn't like, oh, why was there a report? It's like, well, they're from from well-respected, wealthy families, and she's just kind of, I know, but who would believe her? She obviously would have smelt of booze.
Yeah.
And it will always make part of this film difficult to watch, as it should, because it's not easy subject.
Yeah,
it's not easy subject matter, and that's bold for a movie to do. Even today, a lot of movies are very cautious about going along this type of storyline.
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of that is channeled through Jodie, through Brittany Murphy's character, because she starts putting two and two together, and she confronts her mum about it. She asks her, who was Laura Lee Sherman?
So we have to have scenes of her, going through the newspapers.
Oh, of course, because
you've got to.
99, early 2000s.
I kind of missed it. Like, that doesn't really work today. It's always got to be on your phone or your computer.
Exactly.
Why aren't they going back to the library and looking through newspaper stills?
I love that. It's a little time capsule.
Yeah.
But yeah, she confronts her mum about it, and her mum breaks down and admits something I think Jodie has probably known for a little while, that, your dad was one of the four that raped this poor girl that night.
Mom? Your father. Yes.
Well, what? The mum doesn't actually say that. The mum says they had sex.
Yeah.
And it's Jodie that makes the distinction, like, no.
You said.
Yes. It's this crushing devastation for her, obviously, because, like we've established, she has a really good relationship with her father. I think she's got more of an affectionate relationship with her dad than she does her mum. She's her daddy's little girl. And to hear of this crushing blow that, your dad is not, a parent that you adore is not all they seem, that they have this terrible secret, that they have lied their way to success. I mean, it's a pretty powerful moment within the movie.
Yeah.
And again, I think we'll devote some time to the end to talk a little bit about like how it's dealt with, and like the moral and ethical implications of it all. But it's a bold plot for a movie.
It's that side of it that really surprised me, that the BBFC.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
I mean, the BBFC's changed over the years.
Totally.
I would say this part, because initially Michael Biehn had no interest in being in a slasher movie. It was the script and the plot that they had for it that attracted him to the role.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone, though, he's been in a lot of famous movies, Michael Biehn.
Yes. Oh, God, yeah.
He's a great actor.
Terminator, Aliens, he's James Cameron's go-to guy at that point. Yeah.
Do we have to go straight into, who the killer is, really, to continue with the main part of the discussion?
I think we kind of do.
So, at what point did you work out that the... Spoiler warning. Thoroughly spoiled. Fully warned. At what point did you work out the killer was a man?
I oscillated at different points going, is it a man? Is it a woman?
I think first scene could have been either or. There's a scene where she kind of goes, before the second kill, just goes up to the door. Still could be a woman. I think it's the school. The way the character was filmed with the hair covered, the build. Ultimate respect for doing the chase scene in those heels.
Oh, absolutely. I really love that, like the
especially
fury
if it was
of chasing Jodie
if it was a
down.
man doing it. Do you think they could do this type of storyline today?
Yes. Yes.
Because
but I think they might go about it in a slightly different
So the killer, before revealing who it is the child of Laura Lee.
Is the product of that night.
Is the product of that night. So he is basically exacting revenge, not necessarily on the people involved, but the town itself. It's kind of convoluted. Wants to take the innocence of the town that took the innocence from his mother.
Yeah.
And so does these killings dressed like she was that night.
Yes.
God, from a psychological perspective, it's complicated.
It's deep.
Honestly,
it's twisted.
And it gets more twisted. So the character's not. I wouldn't say the character's is trans, because day to day is a man.
Yes.
Has urges for
women.
I think day to day he is a cis man, but he has this broken part of his psyche where he, very Norman Bates, kills people dressed like his mother.
Yeah, he takes on his mother's persona in order to commit the kills.
like,
to carry out the kills.
You follow a channel that does it's like a filmmaker and a psychologist analysing videos. Have they ever done Cherry Falls?
I don't think so. No.
Field day.
Cinema Therapy is the channel.
They'd have an absolute field day with this character.
It's very interesting.
Sorry, reveal who the killer is. It's the teacher.
It's Mr. Marston.
Did you work out who it was?
I knew he was a contender just by virtue of the fact he's one of those characters in the movie that the film wants you to remember. Like, we have enough scenes with him that, you know, like, clearly he's a character that we recognise. But he's also, like, not too much in the foreground that, you know, we pay too much attention to him. So I think he just, you know, if anyone watches crime dramas or, like, mystery, like murder mystery stuff, that's your number one suspect. You know, like someone who is there part of the plot, but not too much part of the plot.
Yeah.
But I also thought it could also be the sheriff's deputy, who, you know, an actual
woman. I feel like they were trying to lean into that, but we didn't have enough scenes with her.
Yeah.
I kind of guessed because after Brittany Murphy, he was this, and before Michael Biehn, he was the second person credited. So I'm like, oh, he's probably the killer then.
That's what did it for David.
Because I recognise the actor. He's like quite known. So I just kind of put two and two together that way.
Yeah. I think,
but also, it's like especially watching it the second time round, it's like it is pretty obvious.
I think so. Like
that it's him.
As you say,
he's really good.
Oh, he goes for it. Yeah, which I always appreciate.
I've seen a lot of criticisms of slashers after Scream, where basically the killer feels completely normal up until reveal, and then they go full like Skeet Ulrich at the end of Scream, you know, when they just go a bit more insane. I understand the criticism of that.
Yeah.
But I also enjoy it.
Yeah, like those examples, and even with Mr. Marston in this one, it's like the psychotic break is so extreme that it's hard to imagine they can ever go back into, you know, like the day-to-day normal alter ego. It's like, no, you there's no going back from this. Like, you have had a full break from reality, almost.
Yeah. So during all this, the sheriff is obviously... A sketch is going around of what looks like Laura Lee, so he's obviously talking with the principal. He finds where Laura Lee moved to after she left town.
Yeah.
And finds a dilapidated house with kind of basement, messed up toys. Like, it's clear the child was abused. And we see a silhouette as he leaves that could be the real her.
Yeah.
The only reason I think it is her is because timeline-wise, there wouldn't be enough time for the killer to get back to town before him.
Yeah.
So I think she's still alive.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
But this also kind of leads to an issue I have. Anyone seen Halloween Resurrection? Remember, like, all the fake, like, torture devices that the production had put in there to make it look like Michael was tortured as a child? That's what this set looks like. It literally looks like, for me, without more of a backstory and a lead-up. So we have to assume, right, so he's a product of a horrific situation.
Yes.
He's then tortured growing up.
Yeah.
But clearly living in squalor, but paid his way through school, got a teaching degree, lives a fairly normal life, has a pretty nice house.
Yes.
For me,
it's a bit too incongruous.
The upbringing he has doesn't result...
I agree.
It might result in the killer he becomes, but not the facade of the person he is beforehand. I think we just needed... I think a stronger... I mean, like, who am I to start suggesting other plot points? Like, I'm not a writer. But I think it would be better if he had a normal upbringing, but found out about what happened to his mum, either through, like, took her own life and left a note. That broke his psyche.
Yeah.
Because he might have had ideas, because we know she had a crush on the sheriff.
Yeah. It makes it all the more tragic.
She was in love with him. So she could have told him stories of his perfect father who might have, like, for whatever reason, wasn't around.
Yeah.
And then his world is shattered. That, to me, would have been a much more compelling story for him, rather than just, oh, he was tortured as a child.
I agree with you. I think, you know, when you asked me before about could you do the story today, yes, I think you absolutely can. But I think if it was written today, it would be... I still don't really know what the right word is to describe it, but it's a bit clunky, and it's almost like a little bit too tropey. That how they went about it in Cherry Falls. It's like, he's the victim of SA, and he's been domestically abused all his life by his traumatized mother, and now when he kills, he takes on the persona of his mother. It almost just feels like the writer what was he called? Ken Selden, I think. Yeah.
Was the director of this Jeffrey Wright?
Jeffrey Wright, yeah.
Not the actor Jeffrey Wright.
No.
Jeffrey Wright with a G.
But I always feel like Ken Selden, the writer, was kind of just like, what would this guy look like? You know, what kind of trauma would this be? And just kind of throwing everything at it. Whereas if you did it now,
I feel more care and attention would be put into that backstory.
I think so as well. And rather than killing, you know, like because of the trauma by his mum, inflicted by his mum, it would be more he's killing
to avenge his mum.
To avenge his...
Because is he avenging her? Is he avenging himself?
It's almost just like, I mean, you know, again, I'm not a psychologist, so, you know, this could happen. A case like this might have happened, I don't know. But to me, it just feels like growing up as the victim of an abusive mother just feels like a little bit too much.
Yeah.
It's kind of like underlining a point that didn't really need to be underlined.
I'm going to steal a line from Peter Griffin. It's like putting a hat on a hat.
Yeah, exactly.
Unnecessary.
Yeah, it is a bit unnecessary. Because then at least, if, you know, going with this other idea that we have of he comes to learn about what happened to him, I could more easily believe, right, this guy has had a pretty okay life. Like, you know, he managed to fund his way through college and, you know, lives a fairly normal life. But as it is in the film, the normal life of, you know, of his day to day compared to what he gets up to.
What if his normal life had been funded by the families of the people involved paying her to leave town?
Interesting.
To protect them.
See, this is what I mean. Yes, you could do this today.
There's so much potential with this story.
I think they would do it a little bit differently. Not as clunkily and not as tropey as they went into.
Two scenes that I particularly like. After... what's the lead character called again?
Jodie.
I'm terrible at remember character names. Actor names,
yeah,
I'm okay with. I'm bad with names, dates, and faces. Okay.
Yeah, that's not great.
I know. I know. When she finds out, like, the revelation, essentially, she doesn't really want to be a part of the orgy.
No.
I do love her, like, because there's news reporters outside the school. You know, obviously, there's people have been dying. Yeah. They're expecting your students to be like solemn and scared. They run out of school cheering.
Sex party. Yeah.
So she goes to Kenny, who has been flirting with another girl after they broke up. Like, and this is where I think they really take advantage of how good she was. Like, this is the first scene for me where I'm like, oh, she's having a bit more fun with this role. Because she comes on to him quite strongly, and is like, right, we're going to do this. He bites her toe?
Oh, he's massaging her foot, and she asks him to bite it. So he does. And then she's asks him to do it a bit harder. So he does. And she's like, no, harder. It's like, do you literally want him to bite your toe off, Brittany?
I think came out of nowhere.
I know, but then she's also like hitting him with her other foot, like she's slapping him to go harder. And poor Kenny's like, okay,
it's like he's
been
a dick in this film. But this moment is when I started to warm to him a bit because
I really like the scene.
To be fair, he starts to try and get back together with her because he knows there's a sex orgy. He's most likely going to be to get laid, but he still wants her. But in that moment, he absolutely has the opportunity. And I think it's a mixture of two things. I think he's scared by the drastic shift in her personality. Maybe also a little bit afraid of a very strong woman coming onto him.
Yeah.
So she storms off. Kind of works out that she's going to go and try and sleep with her teacher because they do have a bit of a connection. They have a couple of scenes together, which is weird when you think that they could be siblings.
Weird.
It goes back to the weirdly charged moments.
Yeah.
Which leads to probably the best line in there's two great lines in this movie. This is the first one where she gets there and he's loading the trunk into the house.
Yeah.
And she helps him push it down to the basement. What's in that thing? Your dad. Maybe mine.
What's in the trunk?
Your dad. Maybe mine.
It's such a good revelation.
If you hadn't worked out that it was him yet, it's on that delivery.
It's great. It really is great.
So now we have something that was quite common, weirdly going to become quite common in the 2000s, like underground torture scenes, because obviously Saw was right on the horizon. So he has them both tied up, he's torturing them both, like tells the story to her again, even though she knows it, makes the dad confess, and that's when we get the like, I knew what I was doing. He's like, but I knew what I was doing. And this is why I think there was definitely a change. So I think they knew they needed to make him a bit more likable to make him a bit more of a
It's
hero.
Yeah,
I think the assault scene was filmed last.
quite possibly.
So I think they changed it to make him not the worst of them.
I have so many mixed feelings on this scene in the basement where Michael Biehn is recounting the story.
He's great.
Oh, he's very good. He's very good. And it's made all the more awful just because he knows his daughter is listening to this terrible thing that he did. And also because he knows that this is also potentially my son that I'm telling this story to as well. So there's a lot that's going on in Michael Bihn's head. But yeah, it's...
The principal's dead at this point.
Principal has been killed, yeah.
This is an issue I kind of have. So I kind of know what you're about to go into. An issue I have with the killer's motivation is... I know it's a revenge on the town, but there's two people involved in that night that we never see. And I think what we needed was when Michael Biehn went to Biehn went to Laura Lee's house, we'd seen evidence that those two have been already killed. Because currently we have no idea where they went to, if anything's even happened to them, whether they're going to be next on the list. Why have it be 4 people if you're only ever going to show 2 of them?
I don't mind that.
It's a plot hole for me. Because to me it would make perfect sense for them to have been killed off first.
I mean, it's a possibility.
And it would just make sense for him to realize that, oh my god, she's going to come after us. Because ultimately, she doesn't... the killer doesn't really target those who actually did it.
I think that's another thing. We'll come back to that because there's a lot to dissect there.
Yeah.
But just going back to that scene in the basement with Michael Biehn, and he's telling the story of what happened, and I think when he's finally confronting himself with this memory of that night. He just can't cope with it, and it's an interesting choice. I think the movie goes down because he is guilty of assaulting her. He was one of the 4. But the fact that the movie makes a point of saying that he was passed out and it was his friends that also kind of forced him onto her. But then you've also got Michael Biehn saying, I knew what I was doing. I knew what was happening. I didn't fight it. But again, he was kind of passed out and very drunk.
The two
and not
scenes
in
don't
control.
line up.
It doesn't quite line up. And I'm not, even now, 2 viewings in, I don't know how I feel about the sheriff. Because in a way, you could also argue he is a victim of SA.
Yeah, but also,
he was forced on her.
Did not report it.
Exactly. And I think this is what it comes down to, and you can't discount that. He might not have been fully conscious and aware of what was going on that night. He might not have directly, intentionally wanted to hurt her. But he kept quiet about it.
Yeah.
He could have reported it, and he didn't. So he is complicit.
Because that also means we have a rapist as a principal of a high school.
Yes.
And a sort of man who regards himself as a rapist.
Pinnacle of society.
As the sheriff.
Yeah.
And 2 people who have left town.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're doing. It's wrong in so many ways and so interesting to talk about.
It is. I think it comes...
And it's something I wish the film had spent a bit more time on.
Because I also, again, coming back to, why Marliston... I think his first name's Leonard Marliston, why he targets who he targets. Because ultimately, yes, obviously he targets virgins, but as you were saying, these kids are not in any way related to the events of what happened 27 years ago. They have no idea this woman even existed.
Yeah.
So it is like he is trying to hurt the town, but it's also not necessarily spelled out why he's targeting virgins specifically.
Yeah.
He could have just been targeting the kids of, any of, high-standing members of the town, and the message still would have worked.
The kids are the people involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would still work.
I think it's just some kind of twisted logic he's formed in his mind of, my mother's innocence was taken from her, so I'm killing kids to preserve their innocence? I don't know, it's a bit of a breakdown
it's also
of
a question
logic.
Of how does he know they're virgins? But
yes.
From what we get, we've been in high school, not relatively recently, but kids gossip. And there's a lot of scenes in this of characters either lying about sexual escapades, which are usually pretty obvious, or exaggerating.
So high school.
Basically, through simply paying attention, I think it would be quite easy for him to work out who is a virgin and who isn't.
I think,
So I reckon teachers talk
just
as much as students do.
I think he's eavesdropping.
Yeah.
He knows. Because there's also that scene where she goes to deliver her paper to him, and it's just him and her in the classroom. Again, like, weirdly sexually charged moment that shouldn't... It's not appropriate.
Potential brother and sisters.
Yeah. But
it's very Luke and Leia in Star Wars.
But he says to her, like, oh, I heard you and Kenny broke up. I can't imagine any one of my teachers from high school knowing something like that about me.
I reckon a lot of them know, but don't care enough to talk about it.
It's a weird moment where he's like, oh, I heard you guys broke up. It's like, okay, you know a little bit too much, sir, about me. As I say, I love the story to this, and I like how dark it goes, because there's still a lot of questions. There's a lot of, like, ethical quandaries this movie raises, but I do think if it was made today, it would be done just slightly differently.
Neater.
A little bit neater, a little bit tighter.
After the scene in the basement, Michael Biehn and Killer have a bit of a scuffle. Does lead to Michael Biehn being killed.
Yes.
But this movie then turns back into a slasher at this point because they are rescued by... Well, she's rescued by Kenny.
She is rescued by Kenny.
Basically turned up to try and stop her from sleeping with her teacher.
Yeah.
But somehow kind of weirdly becomes a bit of a hero in the movie.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, I don't know how I feel about this character.
I still have mixed feelings.
He's still he's in the right place at the right time, and he does the right thing.
He comes through ultimately.
And I love how he takes time to put on his mother's outfit afterwards, because the only person he kills as himself is his potential dad.
Is the sheriff,
But then gets changed to chase them.
Yeah.
Chases them to that big house where the orgies happen. There's a young actor in there called DJ Qualls, who's one of the students, who I always really liked him. He's been Supernatural, Scrubs, Road Trip.
Yeah.
I think this was like his second movie. I really like seeing him in there. Because the start of the orgy scene it's not even that graphic. I reckon it was probably cut down.
I think it was cut.
But it's like them all just kind of like intermingling, looking a bit nervous.
Yeah. Everyone's a bit awkward.
And then by the time they get there, everyone's just up in the bedroom. Everyone's just kind of cuddly.
Yeah. It's tame.
Yeah.
They're all in underwear as well.
No, it's like, we gotta go. It's such a... And then he turns up. Oh, the class is in session. Or something like that.
Class dismissed.
Class dismissed.
Class dismissed!
Class dismissed. And he just starts hacking.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there's no coming back from that.
So they're all trying to escape. They're all trying to get down the same staircase. The sheriff's deputies went up the stairs, got crushed by them all. Honestly, it's a really well put together scene. It feels like chaos, carnage.
Yeah, totally.
And it's a pretty good... Like, not only necessarily call it a showdown, just like a final set piece of just... So many people must be like injured and killed in this sequence.
Totally, yeah.
And it's like his rules of virgin out the window at this point.
It's the ultimate.
But Jodie is still a virgin here.
She's still a virgin.
So she does follow conventions.
She does. But it's the ultimate mix of sex and violence, that whole scene. Also, just the fact that you have a man dressed as a woman as well. It just like adds another little layer to it entirely.
So yeah, like you can imagine seeing your teacher just suddenly dressed as a woman in front of you, trying to kill you.
Fuck.
It's wow. So she defeats him by doing he goes to stab her and she does like a throw that her dad taught her earlier in the film. He goes over the balcony and lands on a fence post.
Yeah.
Student goes over to pull his wig off.
Yeah. It's Mr. Marston.
As if he didn't know. Then, in true Scream fashion, the killer always has to come back with one good scare, grabs this random guy by the hair.
Yeah.
Deputy turns up, 2 guns, blasting away, and blasts his hand off.
That's still latched into the
they obviously
guy's
still
hair.
latched, and just shoots the ever-living shit out of him.
So that's the end of Leonard.
Yeah. The last shot of this movie I really like, because you see like the falls, it's kind of turning red.
Yeah.
Jodie and her mother get interviewed by the police, and why would Mr. Marsden target...
Why would he do this?
Why would he do this?
Why
do you know anything more? And they protect their dad's secret.
They don't say anything.
Which I think is even more messed up when you don't have the confirmation that the other 2 guys were killed.
Yeah, we don't know anything about them.
That's 2 guys. Like, now this crime is widely known. Well, I'll say widely known, just known. There's 2 people there who have got off scot-free. Yeah. And that's why I think, why is there even 4 of them? Why couldn't it have just been the 2?
I think the film, I think the film's trying to make a point of
then
people
get away with it.
People do bad things and they get away with it.
Yeah.
I think those 2 people that we never meet are probably thriving.
Probably.
Somewhere.
But it's just so weird that they would defending the dad, defending the husband.
Yeah, this is what I mean in terms of, morals and ethics. In that they choose to keep quiet, which is obviously something that the dad did 27 years earlier.
He's also the principal, even though he's dead. He's also gotten away with it. His reputation hasn't been...
So I don't know if Jodie is keeping quiet for the sake of her mother, if they're keeping quiet just for the sake to preserve their dad's reputation, if it's, you know, quite selfish, the reason that they're doing it for... I don't know, but for whatever reason, they choose not to reveal that, oh, my dad, the sheriff, assaulted this woman 27 years prior, and it was her son that was wreaking revenge. They don't talk about that, which, again, I think it's interesting at the very least.
Yeah.
It's definitely a choice, a deliberate choice that they made to keep quiet. So, was justice done? I don't know. It's a
movie that it's a head scratcher.
One. It is a bit of a tricky one, yeah. And then we also get the revelation that Laura Lee is potentially still alive.
Yeah, it's actually seeing visions, because it's definitely still just played by the same guy.
Yeah.
Or it's the real Laura Lee.
Or it could be. It's one of those moments, you know, like where Laura Lee's just standing in the distance and then a bus comes and then it's swiped away. So did she really see something? Was she really there? We don't know. I just want to talk a little bit about some standout scenes. You mentioned earlier the scene in the bedroom between Kenny and Jodie. And I really liked it second time especially, because as I say, I've got mixed feelings on Kenny throughout the whole movie. I think he's a bit of a dick, ultimately. Breaking up with a girl, just, you know, doesn't want to sleep with him yet, immediately starts flirting with another girl. But that scene where they're on the bed, like, toe sucking aside, the actor that plays Kenny, a guy called Gabriel Mann, I really like him in this moment, because as you say, he is so kind of flawed by Jodie's, like, flipped behaviour here. Like, he's just caught totally unawares by how, you know, like, seemingly turned on she actually is in you know, like, wanting to have sex with him. And he does, like, he refrains for probably some different reasons, but he does say to her, you know, I only want you if you really want me. I don't want you to do this just to get back at your parents, or just because, you know, you're going through a bit of a bad time. And then when she goes to leave, and he kind of, like, almost, you know, desperately, like, hugs her and wants her to stay, and then she, like, shoves him off and she leaves, and then he you know, he yells at her, and he's like, fine, you know, I don't want you anymore, I don't want to see you ever again. It's almost like, you know, he's throwing a tantrum, but he goes through so many different emotions in that scene, and I can absolutely imagine, like, a couple has probably played that out in real life at some point as well. Like, there was just something about it that rang very true for me. Like, that,
it's a really good scene.
I could totally believe that this is how a real couple in a similar situation would react. And in case, like, you guys haven't picked up on it, this film is actually hilarious in certain scenes as well. As dark as it is, and it is dark,
it needs the comedy to offset it.
Yeah, I mean, again, the sex orgy alone, that whole sequence where we jump between the girls talking about sex and what to expect from sex, and the boys getting stoned and also talking about sex. It's all just great. There's some weird moments, like we said, sexually charged scenes that shouldn't really, you know, be sexually charged, have no business being sexually charged. That line, or that, you know, that sequence rather, where Michael Biehn goes to see Jodie in bed and they're having that discussion of how far she's gone with Kenny. She asks her dad, "Are you disappointed I'm not a virgin?" I don't think any teenager has ever asked their father that ever.
Yeah.
What a weird thing to ask. So the film is peppered with, like, these just strange little moments, strange bits of dialogue that sometimes ring true, sometimes don't ring true. I also just want to shout out about the opening kill as well.
Yeah. Because very well done.
We both commented it's very similar to Zodiac.
It is very similar to Zodiac.
Anyone's familiar with the Zodiac case, killer from the 60s targeted couples in lovers' lanes, and in the movie we've got these two in a car, these two teenagers, and probably about to have sex. Again, the boy is a little bit more into it than the girl is. But then we have another car come up behind them with the headlights, and it blinds them a bit, and the boy gets out to investigate, and that's when
he thinks it's one of his mates pulling a prank.
Yeah. And anyone who's familiar with the Zodiac case, there was the second confirmed killing of the Zodiac case between Mike Mageau and Darlene Ferrin basically played out exactly like that. Mageau recalled a car pulling up behind them, they were blinded by the headlights, and then the killer attacked them. Very reminiscent of Zodiac. In another thing that's reminiscent of Zodiac, in every single confirmed killing, where there was a couple, he succeeded in killing the girl, but he didn't always succeed in killing the boy. And in this movie, the aggression does seem to be aimed more at the girls.
Yeah.
Because, again, when the sheriff goes to visit the crime scene, it's the girl that's displayed.
Yeah, and carved.
And been carved, not the boy. So I don't know, it wasn't in trivia if the movie was a little bit inspired by that, but we noticed it.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to point that out. Also, there's a brilliant line someone in the movie reference talks about how the whole high school is going through a Hyman Holocaust, which I just fucking love. It's an excellent movie. It should have had a US theatrical release. Talking about Columbine happened in April of 1999. This movie premiered at Cannes in May of 1999. So the timing could not have been worse. The Senate was having ongoing discussions and hearings about sex and violence in movies. Whether that was spurred on by Columbine or not, I'm not sure. But multiple different factors as to why this movie did not get the release that it probably
deserved.
Should have.
Should they have just kept it for a year and tried to release it at a later date?
Don't know. I mean, we Scream 3, which came out, I think, 2000 as well, had to be majorly rewritten.
Yeah.
Because of Columbine as well, and the ongoing.
And those characters weren't even teenagers.
Exactly, but just violence in movies,
yeah,
in general, I think was a huge talking point. So it's a shame because I think to those people who know about this movie, really like it and sing its praises, but there's too many people out there that also don't know about it.
Yeah, it wasn't hard to track down.
No,
honestly, watch a few more things about it. And if you're curious, track it down, give it a watch.
There's very few slashes I've seen where I actually don't know how I'm meant to feel about certain characters. It's not as black and white, this one, And we asked each other this the other day, but where would this rank for you in terms of the 90s slashers? I know this is 2000, but let's just say it's on the cusp. Because obviously, we got Urban Legend, we've got Scream, we've got Scream 2. The Faculty, you could
see. I felt
high school.
Scream and The Faculty are still. I do think it's probably a better film than I Know What You Did Last Summer.
I Know What You Did, yeah.
It's not going to be Scream. Faculty is not really a slasher, but it does still kind of fit into the
category.
So it's kind of like in the middle.
In the middle
for me, because it's not. I think because of subject matter, it's not insanely rewatchable compared to those movies are.
I agree with
it's
that.
Complicated plot. I have to give it props over something like I Know What You Did Last Summer.
I'll give it props for going as dark as it did.
Yeah.
And I think I would like to see this one remade. I really would.
Yeah. So have you got any more notes on this one?
Just go and see it. Track it down. It's worth it. I know we've spoiled the shit out of it, but it's still worth a watch.
It's still worth just to experience it yourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you next week.